So good morning. So I'm here to talk with you about testers and teams on the Agile Fluency journey. My name's Diana Larsen. I have been a part of the Agile community since, the moment after the very beginning. I was already in the Agile community when the Agile Manifesto was published. I've contributed to that body of work through some books. I co-wrote. I tend to collaborate in the work I do, so pretty much everything I author except small blog posts is co-authored. So I'm co-author with Esther Derby on the Agile Retrospectives book. It was nice to hear that is part of the secret sauce. It was part of the secret sauce. I co-wrote with Ainsley Neese a book called Liftoff, Start and Sustain Successful Agile Teams, about how do you get that effort going at the team level in the beginning. Wrote a book called 5 Rules for Accelerated Learning with Willem Larsen, and I co-developed a model that I'm going to be talking to you about that's on the cards that you have, called the Agile Fluency Model with James Shore. I've been involved in a lot of conferences, and I was on the Agile Alliance and chair of the Agile Alliance board for a while. So I've been very embedded in this community since 1999, 1998, 99, something like that. And all along that way, I've been doing work in organizations as a coach, consultant, coach to coaches, in those kinds of role. Because when I came into the Agile, the thing that brought me into the Agile community is I was already doing a lot of work around work process design in organizations and helping companies handle the change that comes along with changing your work process design. I mean, every change is a change, right? Every time we learn something new, we are changed. We are different. I mean, we like to think that you could do change and then stop and have no change, and then do change and then stop and have no change, but that's not actually how the world works, right? But the more people that we're trying to bring along with us in a change, the more we have to be thoughtful about. I mean, we can, you and I can decide to go to dinner tonight and both go to someplace completely new, and it's changed for both of us, right? But the more people you're trying to involve and the longer term the effort that you're trying to create, you need more thoughtful ways of thinking about that change. So that's a part of what's going on here for the Agile Fluency model. And some of you may know me through my other business, which was called FutureWorks Consulting. I've really shifted in the last couple of years. I still occasionally do that work, but more of my work is through the Agile Fluency Project. It's where my heart is now, because it feels like I realize that as a coach, as a consultant, I don't scale, right? I can only work with a small handful of people a year, and that I've got white hair, I've been around a while, I've accumulated a body of knowledge that I really want to help to transfer to other folks, so that I'm not the only one, or just the few companies I can work with are not the only ones who can benefit from this. So the Agile Fluency Project is about sort of spreading the accumulated knowledge that I have, that Jim has, that all of the folks over the years who've participated in and contributed to making the Agile Fluency model the robust model that it is, that we can spread that as far and wide as possible. So that's what I'm here for today, and to specifically talk about what is the impact on QA, test, quality, testers, people in that, people who are performing in that way. For me, that means everybody on the team, but sometimes people have that also called out as a particular role. So that's what we're going to be talking about. If you are on a journey on the Agile Fluency path, what does that mean? So let's start with this idea of fluency. mean, most of you have heard the word agile, and most of you have heard the word project, but it's that funny word in the middle, fluency, that sometimes seems like it doesn't fit very well. And this actually came about because Willem Larsen, the person that I wrote the 5 Rules of Accelerated Learning with, who also happens to be my son, happens to be a programmer, happens to be deep in the mob programming world, that's some interesting background. He, in a previous incarnation, in a previous part of his life, he was the director of something called Language Hunters. And it was a way for people to be able to become polyglots with a kind of easy, an easy methodology for that. There's a lot more about it. If you want to go look up language hunting, you can do that online. It'll pop up. But the idea was about language fluency, and that when we talk to people at the American Council for Teachers of Foreign Languages, they have a very particular way of thinking about fluency. In common discussion, we will often just, say, oh, I went to Spain for the weekend or whatever. Oh, are you fluent? Right? I mean, how many times have you either said or heard that kind of a comment? Oh, are you fluent in that language? Well, the American Council of Teachers of Foreign Languages says there's not just one fluency. And in many areas of the world, there's not just one language. If you go to Spain, you might be speaking classical Madrid Spanish, but you also might be in the area of Catalan, where they speak Catalan, or where they speak a dialect of Spanish, or whatever. So even though you may have had several years of schooling in learning to speak Spanish, when you get to Spain, what your fluency is may vary. Your mileage may vary. So at the American Council for Teachers of Foreign Language, from now on I'm calling it ACTFL. That's the acronym. At ACTFL, they say fluency is dependent very much on how you plan to use the language. Do you primarily want to be able to read books in that language? That's one kind of fluency. Because in many languages, spoken language and written language are not the same. French, for instance. Are you planning to go be a tourist for a little while? In which case, you need to be fluent enough to get where you need to go, to ask about the bus, to do something. Maybe a guidebook will be enough, and some practice in intonation and so on. But if you're going to stay longer, if you're going to embed yourself in that country, then at some point you're going to want to do more than just ask and answer questions and things like that. You're going to want to be able to tell a story. Hey, last night we were at this and we did that, and then on the way home I got arrested, and now I'm calling you from jail because I'm hoping tomorrow I can get back to work. The beginning, middle, end, right? Story has to flow, has to have present, past tenses, and so all that kind of stuff. And that can be enough. But if you're going to open a storefront or you want to teach at university, you can begin to see there are different kinds of fluencies for different purposes, depending on what your purpose is. And so one day Jim and I were wrestling with some other kind of problem, and as you do, wanted to be distracted from that hard problem. And we started talking about, well, what if we thought about this idea of fluency in terms of Agile, and how people, and Agile teams, and how people think about Agile. And that led us to the idea of, well, maybe there's more than one use. Maybe there's more than one purpose that businesses decide they want their teams to be Agile. So, fluency is what you can do automatically without thinking. It is what you do routinely. It is your native tongue. You do not have to stop and think about the grammar and what order the adjectives come in. I just learned not very long ago that there is an order of adjectives. That you do numbers before colors before if you're describing something. That's so embedded in me. I am so fluent around that I never even was aware that I was following some kind of heuristic. English, the English of Middle America, where I grew up, is so, I am so fluent in it. It is so second nature to me that I don't even have to think about those things. I do them automatically, right? So it's what we have: routine, skillful ease. It's where we can feel weightless when we talk. I knew I'd bring that in somehow this weekend. It is, but if we're trying to develop fluency in something that isn't our native tongue, isn't what we've been born doing our whole lives, then we have to do a little work at developing fluency. And what we propose is that means we have to do deliberate practice, right? That's a piece of learning. And so gaining fluency is a return on the investment that we make in learning. So if organizations need their teams to have fluency to achieve certain kinds of purposes with Agile, they are likely going to need to make investments in those teams to make that happen. How many of you, Jim and I did a talk here, I don't know, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, something. How many of you attended that talk? Okay. I thought you loved it. I know you. Yeah. Okay, well, good. So this is all new to you. We have revised this. Earlier this year, we put out a revised version of this. So even for some of you, if you're a little bit familiar with this, some of this will seem new. So just thinking in terms of fluency, what is an area of fluency that you have achieved? Not one you were born with, not one that you get to check that box without any work, but some area where you have achieved fluency. Yeah. Typing? Yeah. You don't even have to, you don't even have to think about it. Yeah. It just comes out, all right? What? Driving. How many of you have had that thing about where you get in the car in the morning and you head off to work and you get to work and you go and you think, how did I get here? Right? Right? You were fluent in driving. Now, as Michael said, you have to watch out because you can get to that place where you think you don't have to pay attention anymore. And that can, you're going to have to be able to snap to attention when it's needed. But yeah, that kind of fluency. My stepfather is a sailor. He's part of a big sailing club and they have tournaments and stuff. And he talks about when you're first sailing and you're very carefully watching the telltales on the sail and how the wind goes and it's all in your head, and then at some point it just sinks down and it's yours. You don't have to think about those things anymore. That's fluency. So we practice driving. We get our permit. My grandson is 15. He just got his driving permit. He's practicing. I'm watching him think about this, and he's figuring out what he wants to use driving for and where he doesn't want to use driving, right? So think about those instances. We all have them. I mean, all those instances where we have achieved routine, skillful ease through practicing a thing, right? Practicing a skill. So in testing, where do you need routine, skillful ease? What are some examples of fluency in testing? If you're mostly involved in manual tests, for instance, does that mean that without any problem at all, you can just move into automated testing? Or is there another level of skill to build there, right? Oh, understanding strong patterns? Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, the testers I know, a lot of it is knowing where to look. That's invisible to a lot of the rest of us. But I'm familiar with this domain and I know where to look, where things might be not what they need to be. So then what does the teams that you work with and are embedded with, what kinds of things do they look to you for? What kinds of things do they want from you? What kinds of things do your teams expect from you? Where do they want you to be really proficient to contribute to the collective good? Yeah. Controlling scope, limiting change, and what was the rest of that? Okay, all right. Controlling scope, limiting change. What else? Finding bugs. Where is? Pardon? Communication. Yeah, being able to communicate what your findings are, being able to talk about how that is affecting what's going on. Yeah. So with the Agile Fluency model, what we look at is the team as a whole. And so that's where we're going to go. How might this be different if we're looking at, fluent a programmer who's got fluency in coding, or a tester who has fluency in testing? What if we're taking this all together and we're saying, what is a whole team of people that have different kind of skills? What might that kind of fluency look like? What would a whole team fluency begin to look like?
A team that works on like a cloud project. So
Right. A team that's working, he says, for example, a team that's working on a cloud project where they're going to have to bring to bear many different perspectives on that and have to hold that all at the same time. Yeah.
Roles and responsibilities, designating the tasks automatically.
Right. How is roles and I'm going to try to remember to repeat if I don't, remind me. Roles and responsibilities, designating how information flows among the team. Who do we look to who's probably going to have a certain kind of information more likely than maybe some of others of us, right? Yeah.
Common definition of done, so each of the team members has the same understanding.
Right. The interesting thing, a common definition of done, so people have the same understanding of that. The interesting thing about teams, how many of you have done any kind of working or thinking about complex systems and complex adaptive systems, and particularly complex adaptive human systems, right? Keep kind of going, yeah. One of the things that we know about a complex system is that it needs some things that are the same. We all need to be focused on our cloud product. We all need to be have a common definition of done. But there also have to be differences. So we do have this sense of different people are going to be better to go to for different things because they're going to have different skills, right? The complex systems without diversity of various kinds aren't actually complex. Those are simple systems. That's a single cell or something, right? Even single cell organisms are more complex than we think, but anyway. All right. So the question that Jim and I wrestled with was, so what would we see going on in teams that were fluent in delivering the kinds or producing the kinds of benefits that their organization needs? And we went through several iterations. We started this line of thinking in about 2008, 2009. We developed the first couple of representations of our model and adding in some detail. And then we would take it out to conferences. Agile Open Northwest is one of our favorites, and because anybody can propose a session and we could just show up and say, hey, here's the next iteration of our model, come give us feedback on it. And so we got a lot of people telling us their views of what was going on in their teams and that they could identify as fluencies, desirable fluencies. Think about it as fluent proficiencies in skills, right? So desirable fluencies. And how did that begin to sort of chunk out? How did that grow? Now, one of the things we know about language fluency is that it's great if all you need, your need for the language is, I want to go be a tourist, I want to be capable at finding the Hard Rock Cafe in this new town, whatever your task is, get from the train station to our hotel, understand how to use public transportation, right? That can be enough, and you can stop right there with the language and be perfectly well served. But if you want to stay for 3 months and you do want to be able to tell stories about what happened over the weekend, you're still going to need all that stuff, but you're going to need some additional things. Now, that doesn't mean if you get those additional things when all you needed was the tourist fluency, that you're now a more mature tourist, right? So I want to caution you against this. Is not a maturity model. This is a best fit model. But what we see is these fluent proficiencies, as needs grow in an organization, these fluent proficiencies build on each other. You really can't get certain places if you don't have the foundations. You can't drive if you haven't figured out how to work the brake pedal. It's just, that's like one of the first things, right? So, and then you build on it from there as needed. I have no idea how to work a brake pedal in a big semi truck, big tractor trailer kind of deal. No idea, because I have never needed that. I do know how to work a brake in my own car, and in rental cars. I've kind of extended out of my car into rental cars. But I've never needed to know how to work a brake in a big truck, right? I'm always kind of mystified by the whole jack brake thing, Ooh, it's a mystery, right? Okay. So the Agile Fluency model is based on the idea that there's no one right way to do Agile. We don't take any stand on whether you should do Scrum or extreme programming or Kanban or SAFe or less or DAD or any of the scale. Any of them fit if they're the right one for you. And that's the puzzle, is figuring out what's right for you. So there's lots of ways to be successful with Agile, we discovered, not just one. And that was part of what was going on in the Agile community when we started this investigation. There was a whole lot of, well, you're either Agile or you're not, right? You can't just do Agile, you have to be Agile. You got to have the mindset, right? Maybe, depending on your need, right? So lots of ways to be successful, and what it needs to do, if you're going to adopt Agile at all, it needs to be helping you progress toward your goals. It's not an end in itself. It's a means to your end, right? The thing that if you're trying to achieve weightlessness, how can Agile help you with that, right? So that's what we're thinking about. And so we played around with this model a bunch of different ways, and at one point it was a pyramid, and I knew that wasn't going to work. And then we had it, kind of starting at different places. Finally, we ended up with the beginning of the whole thing at the top, and just sort of as if it were a map, as if it were a pathway. And actually, one of our favorite metaphors for this is bus zones. So if I'm in Portland, Oregon, and I'm standing right here at the World Trade Center, and I really would like to get a building permit, will it make sense for me to get on a bus and go all the way to the furthest possible zone of the bus system, out to the IKEA store or Gresham or something, to get my building permit? No, if it weren't under construction, I'd just go right over to City Hall, right? I'd stay in the same zone that I'm in. So that's the pathway through this, is more along those lines. It's like, how do I get to where I need to go? How do I identify my destination? And then figure out what investments we need to make to get there. So that's what we're doing. So at the Agile Fluency Project, our vision is that Agile can be done well, fulfilling their goals, their needs in every organization. And that all teams can practice Agile fluently in a way that satisfies those goals and needs. That's what we want to see, and that's why we decided we weren't going to scale to make that happen everywhere, all over the place. You know, you got to have a big goal, right? Worldwide, that's simple, right? Okay. So, the model starts. I'll do a little quick description of the model. Any questions up to this point? Comments? Yeah. Yes, and he's asking about what shift seems to be an operative word, and how do you make those shifts? Yeah, I'll be speaking to that as we go along. There's not one answer, but it goes through, right? So we assume this model takes as its baseline something we call pre-Agile. It used to say START there, but we discovered that START made people think they were supposed to race through. So no, it's just pre-Agile. There's nothing wrong with pre-Agile if it's the thing that helps you meet your goals and fits your purpose. The characteristics of pre-Agile are we're working in a kind of a planned way, phased development probably, or maybe ad hoc. I go into as many organizations these days that are startups or grew from a startup, and they're still just doing things willy-nilly. They have no process at all, right? For a while, at least, that worked really well for them. 3 guys in a garage, how much process do you need, right? So whatever, you've got this group of individuals who are working together. They are probably working as individuals. They may be getting, if it's a more formalized process, they may be getting assigned tasks as individuals, right? And then everything gets kind of wrapped up together in the end, we hope. And they have all the skills and tools and resources they need. Resources not being people, but resources being access to information, tools and equipment, that kind of all that kind of stuff, that they need to do the job. They may have super clearly defined roles and responsibilities that never waver. And that can work in some places. That can work in some places. And if it does, it's fine. We encourage you to not spend any money on any Agile consultant and just keep going. Keep getting the good results you're getting, and don't worry about whether you're Agile or not. But a lot of organizations, that's not really working for them. That's not helping them achieve their goals. That's not helping them get the kind of results that Michael Ma was talking about at BMC and Follett and so on, that business leaders really want and are expected to deliver. So the first thing that happens, if you decide you really want to go Agile, the first fluencies that need to be developed, we call focusing. And the outcome of really getting fluent, routine, skillful ease at being a focusing team is that everyone on the team and working with the team sees their work from the business perspective, and their work can be redirected as needed. As we get more information, who was saying, had the comment earlier, I guess it was a question to Michael about, well, what happens when our big room planning turns into waterfall and we have no flex, we make the plan and then there's no flexibility, right? No, we want to be able to, as we learn more, we want to be able to redirect our teams as needed. If the customer seems to want more of this, we want to make sure we're providing more features that do that kind of stuff. If they want less of this, then we want to do that. So we need to be able to do that. So that's the outcome that we're after. That's the outcome that is most important to a business that needs a focusing team. The team has to do some work here. They then have to, if they don't already have them, have to develop some fluency in some skills. So at the team level, they may need to learn more about how to work in what we call an agile fashion, how to use work processes, how to work in either, depending on if Scrum or Kanban is your drug of choice. Are we going to work in iterations? Are we going to work in single piece flow? Are we going to have WIP limits? Are we going to have Scrum commitments in our Scrum planning? How are we going to do that? So we have to figure out how to do that. These are the shifts. It's the shift from, in this case, it's the shift from an individual contributor mindset to a team member mindset. Now we're collaborating. Now we're doing this together, right? It's not just about did I get my stuff done. It's about have we completed our work, right? That's the big shift in this one. So, there'll probably be some coaching and training. You might have a full-time embedded coach. You might have a Scrum Master who's bringing in different ideas. There's lots of ways that can happen too, but the idea is that kind of thing needs to happen to bring the team, this new team, to a place where working as a team feels most natural, routine, most fluent to them, right? So in this kind of team, what we usually discover is that the role of the testers, the role of QA, is multifold. It goes in a lot of different directions. We have to include testing in the definition of done. We're not done until it's tested, till we know, because we don't want anything to escape. So as long as we can keep it within the sprint or within this flow, it's fine. And so we want those things caught before they escape. And so testing has to be included in whatever your definition of done is. But also there's the tester is looking in two ways. They're looking at their product people, the business liaisons that tell the team what the work is and how they should do it. They have a role in helping those folks really conceptualize acceptance tests and what other kinds of things, because they tend to be a little closer linked to the technology than maybe those product people have, so they can do some of that translation. And then also a layer of fluency that testers may need to develop, do deliberate practice around, is writing automated tests. And they may need to work with the programmers to do that. You may want to, over time, transition that work to the programmers completely, but they aren't going to know how to do it in the beginning because they don't think with a tester's mindset. They think with a programmer's mindset. So how do we help to build that capability in the team? And testers can really, really help with that. By the way, I'm not a tester. You probably figured that out already, and I don't I don't even claim to be one. I've worked with a lot of folks in test. And so when I was putting this, this is the third or fourth generation of this particular talk. And when I was putting this together, I went to the people that I know that are really great testers. So I went to Lisa Crispin and Janet Gregory and, those folks and said, is this the right way to talk about this? Well, does this make sense? And so I got their blessing. So that's where a lot of this is coming from, is them saying, well, maybe adjust it this way or whatever. So the organization also has some things that they need to be doing here. This is where those organizational investments come in. We often talk about, if we're talking about achieving fluency as a bus ride, then the team has to ride the bus to wherever they're going, but the organization has to buy the tickets, right? Or has to rent the bus or something, right? So there's some investments that go on here. And so these are on your cards as well. So shifting, again, another shift is managers shifting from the mindset of managing individuals to managing teams and work systems. That's another huge shift. And the organization has to support and invest in that. Making sure that teams do, if you want teams to produce value, you've got to have somebody who's telling them, explaining to them, helping them understand where value comes from in your organization, right? At some level, right? So there's got to be product folks involved. So we call this a team model, but it has implications far outside the team as well, right? But the teams are like the canaries in the coal mine. They are the indicators of what kind of Agile is needed here. The things that we expect from the teams, the way they are performing those things, the gaps that we see are all tell us things about how the whole organization is performing. There's a famous catchphrase that says the macro is in the micro. We can look at teams and understand how the broader system is working. So the organization needs to make sure that there aren't still things in place that get in the way of people thinking of themselves in terms of team members. A lot of organizations have individual performance reviews, things that set up competition among team members instead of collaboration, where everyone gets those disincentives out of the way, right? If I'm on a team and we're in, Cube City and my team members are over there and back here, and that's a disincentive to us working together as a team. It's much better if you can pull us all together in a team workspace, get us more closely located. If not completely co-located, we need to at least be close enough to have those conversations. So anything that is an impediment to team success, we want the organization to take a look at and invest in. So, focusing, I have actually worked with a number of organizations. I'm working with an organization right now that has 7 teams, and they have told us that 6 of those teams need more than focusing. But one of them, focusing will do. If they could just get that team so that they can redirect it and so that they take a business perspective and so on, that would be super. It would be an improvement over what they've got. But it's not enough for all of their teams. Some of their teams, they need more. And for that, we talk about the delivering zone. The outcomes here is the team shipping on a market cadence. And that's a term we use. It actually means, what's the pull from the customer? How often does the customer want to get something new from us? Right? And that varies so much with industry and product. Amazon, many times a day, lots of website kinds of things. The customer cadence is many times a day. They are constantly pushing out tiny new little features coming at us all the time because we'll just take them and move on. Jim and I, at separate times, we both ended up there, some coincidentally. We worked for a company that made mass spectrometers, and we worked with the teams that built the software that went inside the mass spectrometers. Those have to undergo 18 months of FDA approval. There was no point in shipping multiple times a day to them, right? That just created havoc, right? So they had a very long cadence. Doesn't matter. Whatever the cadence is, we want the product person, the person who has the most intimate understanding of that customer and that market, to be able to say, now's the time. Ship at will. Release at will, right? So we want to, because we want to be capturing value back for the organization, for the business, as often as we possibly can. Now, our customer cadence is going to influence how often is as often, but that's what we want to do. So we want to be able to do that as with regularity, and we want to reveal any problems early on, so that we can fix them when they're small. That was another thing that Michael mentioned this morning about I don't remember if it was Follett or BMC. I think it was Follett, about the idea that they would catch things before they escape from the sprint, and the idea about if the industry average is 35 defects and we're releasing 14, what's the implication of that? Well, it means we're spending a whole lot more time building new stuff and a whole lot less time fixing old stuff. So we want to make sure that we keep those bug counts really low, and any other obstructions that are getting in our way to that continuous deployment, continuous integration, we want to get those out of the way. So those are our outcomes for delivering. The team needs to now kind of up their game. It's not enough to really understand individual programming practices and how to collaborate, be a good team. That was being a tourist in the Agile world. Now we've got to go live there for a while. And for this, the technical team members, and actually all of the team members, really need to understand the best engineering practices in their field. So whether it's DevOps or designers or UX, UI, or programmers or whatever, or subject matter experts, whoever has come together on the team, we need them to have real engineering excellence. And for the programmers, the developers, that means Agile engineering excellence. So we're looking at TDD, we're looking at probably more instances of pairing or mobbing, so we're getting all those big brains all onto the problems. They may need to move into things that make them feel not as comfortable, like shared coding standards and shared code ownership. And now it's not just my thing I'm building, it's our thing I'm building, and how do I make that shift? So these are the kinds of shifts that are going on here. Cross-training. When somebody at the end of Michael's talk asked him about pairing, and I was biting my tongue a little bit at the answer, because everything he said was right, and you don't want the same two people pairing all the time if you can avoid that, because that doesn't achieve the knowledge transfer. You want people pairing with different people on the team, depending on the size of the team, because then everybody gets to know what everybody knows. Some people are going to know it deeper, understand it more. But then, we have in Agile this idea of the T-shaped people or the pie-shaped people that have depth in one area, but have breadth in a lot of the areas that their team needs, so that they're resilient. In baseball, we call it bench strength, right? Working teams need that too. So, in the role of testing, in delivering, now testing is not just sort of, should I go help the product people? Should I go help the developers with the automated? What should I be doing here? Now testers are a full embedded part of a cross-functional team. And they may be stepping up in a lot. Programmers may be pairing with testers. That may be a way that that knowledge gets transferred and skills get transferred. So they're a full part of the team. We have generalizing specialists, and test is also moving in. They may learn more about what the subject matter experts know. Maybe they're going to stretch into the domain knowledge, further domain knowledge, or maybe they're going to stretch some other way. Moving away from having their focus on manual or automated testing to exploratory testing. How can I best help this team understand, and how can I get the best sense of the kinds of things that the customer might be encountering, right? And then quality also has a role to play in enabling that continuous integration and deployment and so on. The organization, the biggest investment of the organization here is there is so much intense learning going on as the team is developing this fluency. Once they've got it, it's, then they're really accelerating. But while they're developing fluency as a team in delivering, there's that, there's the learning curve. There is a productivity dip. There's a slowdown that happens. And it's a big challenge for a lot of organizations to have patience through that productivity dip. The idea of integrating these disciplines and seeing the benefits of having them work together instead of more functional siloed work, and embedding programmers. There's a wonderful talk that I first heard here a number of years ago by a woman named Mary Panza, and has a company up in Seattle. Name is escaping me at the moment, but they make trading. Commodities traders, software for commodities traders, they've actually put their teams right on the trading floor next to the traders. So the teams can really know what's going on and what their customers need. And again, some things seem kind of counterintuitive, and so they have to be able to say, well, let's experiment on it. I don't quite see how this is going to work, but let's experiment on it. And that's also hard for organizations and a big shift. So 60-70% of all organizations and maybe more, maybe 80, want their teams to be either focusing teams or delivering teams. As we've gone out and talked to folks, and in what we've worked with in organizations, those are the two most common business benefit buckets, bus zones that organizations need. But it's not the only thing. And there are a couple of further places. The next most common one, which is not very common, but more common than the last one, is optimizing. And this is where the team actually owns the product. The people who understand the product value are embedded in the team. Some engineers may have developed such deep domain knowledge that they get the lives of their customers and know what they need. They know if it's hardware, they really understand how this hardware works and what it needs to work more smoothly. So in the team itself, can happen very good product decisions. It helps to eliminate handoffs. And speed decision making. We're not having a lot of wait time for somebody else to finish a thing so that we can then do our part. We're not waiting for somebody else to make a decision so that we can get our stuff done. Everything we need is in the team, and we own the whole product. And it gets things to market very fast. So the team, very often at this point, the team is eager to move into this mode, but the organization may not be so eager. And even though they know they need to go this direction, so sometimes now it's the team waiting during the productivity dip while the organization figures out how they're going to do things, because it often requires a shift in hiring practices. It may require a shift in management structure. There's a lot that goes on here. And their job, the team's job, is to build trust so that in a new way, always the team is building trust with the organization by their delivery cadence and so on. But in this instance, they're building trust by with the organization by continuing to make those good product decisions, continuing to show that they have the interests of the business at heart, and just sort of patiently waiting. And then, they're also then learning about the business and the customer. Testers here are also get a bump up, maybe working much more directly with the customer, either shoulder to shoulder with the product and business people, but to really understand what is it that's going to bug them, right? What is it that gets in their way? I keep waiting for the day when I'm sorry, anybody here work for Microsoft? I am waiting for the day when I can open a Microsoft product, ready to do a piece of work, and I don't get we've got an update for you to install window that pops up in front of me, completely blocks my flow, right? What? Again? And even if I dismiss it, it's already had that impact on me, right? So, and there are all kinds you all have your own examples of that kind of thing in the software that you use. What if the people who are building that software understood your flow, your way of doing things so well that never happened? That you were always ready to just smoothly move into your work, or smoothly having this device that you want to work with do what it needs. So, so testing also then gets on this market cadence rhythm too. The business it needs to make sure that every team has business expertise in it, and that can look different on different teams. It may be a product person, it may be a engineer with a lot of domain knowledge. It can be a lot of different. It could be a QA person. They need to create that match between product and market, product and customer in the teams, and they need to build teams around that organizing principle. Teams may need their own budgets, and like I said, you might need to restructure how you've arranged management and look for results, not adherence to the plan. Now we have talked about like 98% of all teams and all organizations. However, we have seen evidence of one further and some indicators that there might be more. So that's why on this one it just kind of trails off into the distance over here, because we think there may be another shift that teams could make, but we haven't seen enough of it to be able to really describe it in any good way. But we have been able to describe this last one, where what we call strengthening teams, and this is in terms of strengthening the whole organization. This tends to be smaller companies. It tends to be oftentimes companies that have started out as very kind of self-aware startups and have paid attention along the way. Sometimes they're able to keep that kind of culture where it's one for all and all for one across the board, up and down, everywhere, right? It's very difficult for big companies to backtrack to this, we've discovered. Although there are a few that have tried. I mean, not so much in the software world, but in W.L. Gore, maybe Valve, there's some out there. But the idea here is everybody in the organization is there to stimulate innovation. We want to be something new. We want to be a company that thinks in new ways about how to be a company and how to provide our products and so on. And so we are focused on not just this product value stream or this team's value stream, but the whole value stream of the whole organization. We are inventing new markets, so on and so forth. Like I said, this is such a small group that we don't even really go deeply into this one. At this level, distinctions between, we're more, the diversity is more in what skills we need. The distinction between job roles begins to kind of get fuzzy. So that's the whole thing. That's what you have on your card. A lot of folks ask, how does this work in real life teams? And one of my best examples, and one that I have permission to share, is, it was just a delight to learn that Spotify was one of the first organizations that we heard about that had looked at the early parts of this, early versions of this model and really began to incorporate it in how they did things. And so people were always asking, well, is Spotify an optimizing organization? It's like, well, it's a team model. It's team by team. But I'll ask. And so I was talking with one of the managers upper level managers at Spotify. I said, so how do you think about this? And they said, most of our teams are delivering teams. We have a really solid product. People love it. It's got good features, but we do need to be incrementally improving those features, right? So we've got a lot of teams that are focused on doing that. We have a few teams that are working on new ideas for new products. They completely own them. They are optimizing teams. And we have some folks that are focusing teams, that they're working on short-term websites for a particular product, or some kind of shorter-lived thing that doesn't, technical debt is not a big issue because we don't need it to sustain for a long time, that kind of stuff. Right? So that's been a lot of talking. So what questions do you have? What other questions do you have? Yeah.
So your model looks like you kind of progress through from one level to another.
Yeah.
Is iteration also over this whole thing? Something that
No, we don't see that. No, the iterations would be within the thing. And again, you only progress through if you need what's further down in the model. You stop where you need to stop. You don't have to go any further than you really need to go to satisfy your business needs. So it's just that you can't really do delivering well if you don't already have some of those focusing skills. If your team doesn't know how to collaborate and work as a team, they're going to have a hard time with collective code ownership. That kind of stuff. There's a build in that sense. Yeah. But it's not demanded, or it's not even encouraged. Well, for one thing, you'll notice that what's on the card that wasn't on the slides is how long does it take to make that journey? And I get a lot of folks who will say, oh, we want all our teams to be optimizing teams. And then we start talking about, well, you're just now embarking on thinking about being agile, so you're probably thinking about a 3 to 5 year change process. It's like, well, maybe delivering's enough, right? So, because that kind of investment and those kinds of shifts take time. With human beings, that just takes time. And so we have to be clear about that's going to happen too. So, yeah. See another hand there. Yes.
I try to characterize this question. I'll start by saying my perception is that someone who tests looks at whatever looks at the outcomes in a broader sense.
Yeah.
More breadth as opposed to depth.
Yeah.
Whereas developers, they drill down deeply.
Yeah.
And so it makes a matrix of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's that mutual understanding of that idea.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, the test software person out the door,
Right.
as opposed to being competitive or, oh, you're making me look bad, or that kind of a thing.
Right.
Am I out in the weeds here in this?
No, that actually, I mean, that's part of the reason. So you were talking, so I'm trying to capture what your question was. You were talking about the testers have an ability to go broad and programmers tend to go deeper, and that there is this, has been built up over the years, this kind of perception that when testers find bugs, they're somehow inhibiting the developers' chance to move forward and on some new thing or somewhere else. And that's part of the reason why I really emphasize the changing role. But it's always, once you enter into this, once you leave pre-Agile, I would say that's very accurate in terms of some of the stuff that goes on in pre-Agile. Once you begin to move into this model, once you begin to think in terms of a focusing team, collaboration, understanding how to be a collaborative team, understanding how the work needs all of us together in some ways, that becomes a primary part of this. And so breaking down some of those barriers, understanding that if our focus is seeing progress from the business's perspective, seeing progress from the customer's perspective, are we getting what we need? We're no longer building in terms of what's technically fun, or we're not building a component by component. We are now building according to the next most valuable piece of a feature that we can possibly produce and send out into the world. And that takes all of us. We all have to be working. Definition of done needs to include all of our work, because the thing is not ready to go be of service to the customer until, and thereby get money into the business, until we've all been able to bless it and touch it and make sure that it can move forward. So that's a fundamental shift. And yeah. Is that, yeah, okay. Yes, in the back.
Who is overseeing this? Who is saying, yeah, you are now a focusing organization or a focusing team?
Right,
Do you want to move to delivery?
right.
And then what happens when something upstream starts downshifting and you start
Yeah.
doing some of that?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of ways. So how do we know? How do we know if we're a focusing team or a delivering team, and whether that matters, and what the other folks are doing? So there are a couple of ways that we manage that. And one is we've written a white paper. The first one was like, I don't know, 5 or 6 pages long. The new one's like 20 pages long. There's a lot more information in it if you print it out. It's on Martin Fowler's website, but you can also get to it from our website. There's a button that takes you to Martin's, and it's there. And there's a lot more information there. And we talk about what proficiencies should you look for, what business benefits will you see as you go through this, and so on. And so some folks just read that article, kind of do their best to integrate the model, and then they just go by observing. Do we see the team doing this, or do we not see the team doing that? And in some instances, that's sufficient. And you know, if you write it down, then you can come back in 3 or 4 months after you've made some investments in helping the team and say, is it any different now? Do I see new things? Do I not see new things? At the Agile Fluency project, we also have developed a diagnostic instrument that teams can use for self-reflection, and then that gets aggregated up and reported to the organization. So the organization never finds out what a particular team said, but they understand, they get what all the teams say that they have in common. And part of what we do at the project is we train people how to facilitate those conversations with the teams and using that diagnostic. So then there's some quantitative to go along with the qualitative. And some organizations find that is more to their taste. You know, there are other folks who have been consulting in organizations for a long time, software organizations. They've got a deep well of knowledge. They recognize these patterns right away. They may just use the Agile Fluency model as a way of helping to have a conversation with leaders, and then they know how to bring their own skills to bear. So there's a lot of different ways it plays out. It's pretty flexible in that sense, but we do have our diagnostic. It's part of a suite of materials that we have that people can become trained in if they want. And yeah, and we just go from there. So, red jacket and then in front of you. Hi.
Because I do understand this kind of model fits very well that we are studying.
Mm-hmm.
I also know, like, from perspective when teams get formed and structured and things,
Yeah.
how does that happen?
Sort of like the dynamic reteaming kind of thing where teams are shifting around a lot and they're not kind of staying a stable team over time. Yeah. It makes it more difficult, but what we still can do though is if the products are staying the same, we can look at it in that sense. We can say, what is the team that's working on this product? And even if some of the membership has changed, if it has achieved focusing fluency, for instance, and is very solid there, we see that even though the members may swap out, the fluency will continue because it's become embedded in that team. So, I mean, if the whole team blows up, everybody goes away and they assemble a whole new group of people, well, then you're starting over, right? But as long as you've got some core, that gets passed along as part of kind of the institutional knowledge of that team. And this is how we do things. And then you can continue to check in again and again and see how they're moving that forward. It'll slow them down for sure if there's a lot of churn, but I mean that's one of the lessons, right? Yeah, and yeah.
All right, and I think what I was going to ask is a bit follow on from your question.
Yeah.
Gentleman's over there, but it seems to be a forward flowing.
Mm-hmm.
What is in practice, is there any way that you don't go back a step? Say,
Oh yes.
or
Yeah.
one part of the organisation was more forward than the other. I'm thinking from experience how dev and QA departments might be more agile in the organisation, so we're trying to bring them forward.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like it's always forward shifting, but
Right.
is there any point where you might go back and optimise
Yeah.
step and take a step back?
Yeah. 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 So yeah, how did the path through the model, does it ever go the other way? Basically, is yeah. Yes, yeah, we have seen that, and frankly, we see it. I mean, again, I'll use the Spotify example. When they were very small, when they were first starting out, they were kind of they had several strengthening teams. They all kind of worked together, right? But as they grew, their teams, they couldn't sustain that. They were just too big. There's too many communication channels. The number of people on involved -1 doubled and that. So now they say, well, we have optimizing teams and we have delivering teams and we have focusing teams. Whereas in the beginning, everybody was doing everything, and they were one big team, and there was a strengthening team, and they may have split up a little bit. I don't know enough about their story to know that, but yeah, you can go back, and maybe there are lots of organizations that do their R&D, get their big idea, pivot, and say we're going to only support this product. We've already disrupted our market. We're not interested in doing that anymore. We're going to stay with this. This seems to be our cash cow. And they may back off having optimizing teams and just do incremental improvements to that cash cow and have mostly delivering teams. So there's a lot of reasons why you might scale up or scale down here. And it all has to do with your business model. So I'm going to stop us there and kind of keep going because we've got a little more to do here. All right. So this is where you get to do some work. So find 2 or 3 people around near you and just have a moment to talk about where in your present organization, or if you're not in an organization right now, your most recent one, what zone would you say your team was attempting or solid in, or however you want to characterize it? And where did testing fit in that? How did you as a tester, or the other folks who were testers or mostly QA focused, how did they fit in that team? And do you think that's the zone of benefits that that organization really needs? So I'm just give you a few minutes to get with 3 or 4 other people and have that conversation. Okay. So just 2 or 3 comments. What came up in your groups? What fluency zones do you think you're in? Where does testing fit in that? Yeah.
Well, we're kind of, I think our group is kind of just before, it's in between pre-agile and focusing. We're just making the transition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for our company, our best value option would be the delivering.
Mm-hmm. So you think,
I don't see us giving completely autonomous control to a team.
right.
They're more taking whatever business
Right.
unit marketing, whatever takes in. We're solving those problems.
Right. Right.
We're not going out to figure out where the market is.
Okay. So somewhere between pre-agile and agile, just beginning the journey, feeling like there's still some way to go, but probably headed toward delivering. Does that capture that? Yeah. Okay. Who else? What's another one? All right. Yeah, over here. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and actually, that is not that uncommon. He said they're from REI. They've got a lot of teams across the enterprise. They've got some that are pre-agile, some that are some that they're just kind of all over the map. And that's common. And people want to look at this model and call it an organizational model. And we keep pushing back against that because it really is about the teams. And the organization is the collective system that all the teams make, or at least the engineering part of the organization, is the collective system that all the teams make together. But different teams may need to provide different benefits to the organization, and so we encourage that level of granularity with this, for sure. Yeah. Okay, one more set of questions. And this is for you to just think about, as we're not going to, we can't dive deep into this, but it is the next set of questions after all of what you've heard. So what would we need to do if we want to get to here? What kinds of things do we need to do? Is our organization ready for that? What would it take to get them ready for that? Right? Who do we have to talk to? Who do we have to influence? Who do we have to take some information to help our teams get the investments they need to provide the benefit that they're being asked for? Because that's a frustrating position to be in, when you're being asked for something and you just are being blocked from providing it. So we want to open those channels. How do we do that? So this is another, so let's just take a minute on this one, have a really brief conversation about this. All right. So I'm going to let you carry those conversations with you into lunch. I never like to be the person who sits between a whole group of people and their lunch. So this is a little bit about us, the Agile Fluency Project. Like I said, we're trying to help as many people become successful with the Agile that they need as rapidly as possible, and that doesn't mean us doing the work. It means helping others do that work. And so if that's of interest to you, I suggest go check out our website. And thank you for coming and playing with me this morning.